Curiosity kills the cat. You've probably heard this saying so many different times before. Personally, I know that if I got $1 for every single time it was used, I'd probably be a millionaire by now. But to what extent is this statement actually true? In the case of space and technology, I can almost guarantee you the answer will always be no. Now, from the technology we have to put a man on the moon, to the current technologies we have right now in the status quo, all our innovations are dependent on our innate human curiosity. The greatest discoveries of humankind always come from our own curiosity. But curiosity also drives another contender, change. There is change that comes with every new discovery, one that signals that every time we cross that point of no return, every time we cross that point in that horizon, there really is no going back. So is change good or bad? What can we learn from it, and how do we adapt to change? Hello, my name is Sadhana Gangadharan, and in this speech, I'll be exploring how space and technology coexist, as well as looking at change through a different lens. But before we get into change specifically, let's look at a past example of how space and technology coincided and led to a change. Now, I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of the Cold War. Now, a segment of the Cold War was the space race between the USSR, the Soviet Union, as well as the United States of America. Now, in 1957, the USSR launched their first satellite into orbit, Sputnik, and they also launched their first human into space, Yuri Gagarin. Now, the American people sought to beat the Soviet Union. Why? Because they wanted to win. That was their drive that initiated them to innovate. However, once Sputnik was launched, the Americans started to go for these innovations. And after they did so, they eventually, through the help of astronomers and mathematicians such as Katherine Johnson, put their first man into space, John Glenn, and their first man on the moon, Neil Armstrong. But when people saw Neil Armstrong in space, what did they think? They saw the awe and beauty of space, and that radiated from the images from that Apollo 11 space mission. And because of this, what had happened? Their perceptions changed. Before, it had been all about beating the USSR and winning. But it changed to something more profound. The message became, oh, I want to look at the world and beauty outside of our tiny planet. Now, what can we learn from this example? Change doesn't always come from these innovations. It comes from the curiosity of humans, that innate drive. Now, let's take a look at our current day, our present. We can see technological advancements such as AI taking over our world by a storm. There's artificial intelligence, Boston Dynamics, which comes out with new robots, as well as the Hubble telescope and the James Webb telescope as well, which comes out with new images every other day. Now, let's hone in on a specific advancement, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has the potential to take our world by a storm. It can utilize and optimize almost any task and do so efficiently. So why not we utilize it? There have been some fears that come with artificial intelligence. It ranges from their security risks to the privacy concerns, as well as the environmental damage AI has. But firstly, AI has the potential to take over a lot of human jobs. Because AI does not need a paycheck, nor does it need to have shifts. It literally can do so much better than any human. Why? Because a human needs to have a shift as well as a paycheck. However, it can't do it efficiently as well. It can do it efficiently as well. Now, secondly, the environment. AI has disastrous effects on the environment, from the mining to the hardware for the data centers that it relays to the quarries that consume fresh water. In fact, according to the International Energy Agency, one ChatGPT query consumes 10 times as much fresh water as a regular Google search. But not only that, AI also has potential to lead to more potential security risks. For example, in third world countries, AI has access to patient data that has been used without the patient's consent. Therefore, this can lead to leakage of their data, of their privacy, through these chats. But we haven't looked at the flip side of AI. What is AI's potential? Now, the short answer is, we really do not know. In the current status quo with our current estimates and a lack of implementation, there really is no idea of what AI can come to behold. However, we do know this. AI can do any task efficiently, but that doesn't mean it has to replace humans. It can work with us, and it can be mitigated. So how exactly? Now, there are many solutions. AI can be asked to optimize its own energy consumption. It can be asked to optimize how we solve for climate change as well. Now, AI can also be used in the daily, day-to-day setting. For example, doctors can use it to diagnose patients with more accurate diagnosis and do so with a database of data that connects to previous patients who've had those diseases. Lawyers can use it to save time on their cases while also making sure that they're interacting with their clients. Engineers can use it to potentially debug their code and eventually get a more thorough understanding of how to build more efficient buildings. Now, change. That one word keeps coming up. And the thing that's preventing AI implementation right now is that fear of change. But what do we as humans always do when we face change? We adapt. We adapt to our surroundings. We learn to cope. For example, if you moved out from your old school to a new one, you adapt to that change. You learn to make new friends, and you learn to make new connections in your new community. If you move to a new country, you learn to adapt to the language and its customs. If you move and if you lose a loved one, you learn to cope with that loss and cope with the understanding that they're gone. But even before all of this, even before that adaptation, what do we as humans need to adapt? We need courage. We need to have that sliver of courage in order to essentially make new friends, get to learn that new language, or even cope with that grief. Because in the end, we're all human. So what do we need to do in terms of AI? We need to make sure, firstly, that we unite together and embrace the idea of change. Because secondly, it will happen whether we like it or not. Artificial intelligence will continue to rage on, and this debate will still continue to go on. However, I believe implementation is key, and it will happen whether we like it or not. So let's all keep an open mind and embrace the idea of change through our courage and adapt to AI. And as a quick side note, curiosity definitely doesn't kill the cat. It shapes it. Thank you.